In every country, there are cases that never got answers. People vanished. Bodies were found. Witnesses disappeared, and despite investigations, suspects, and decades of theories, the truth was never uncovered. Tonight, we're looking at 5 unsolved mysteries that still haunt people to this day. Cases where the evidence exists, but the answers don't. In November of 1970, hikers walking through a remote valley in Norway made a disturbing discovery. Among the rocks of a desolate mountainside lay the burned body of a woman. There were no identification documents, no clues to her identity, and what investigators would soon uncover suggested something far more mysterious than a simple crime. The case would become known as the Isdal woman, and more than 50 years later, no one knows who she really was. The body was discovered in Isdalen Valley, a remote area surrounded by steep mountains and thick forests. The valley had an eerie reputation among locals. Some even called it Death Valley. When investigators examined the scene, they noticed several strange details. The woman's body had been badly burned, but nearby they found items that seemed deliberately arranged. There were empty bottles, burned clothing, and a partially melted umbrella. An autopsy revealed something even more unusual. Inside the woman's stomach were traces of sleeping pills, but the cause of death remained unclear. Then investigators made a discovery that deepened the mystery. At the train station in nearby Bergen, police found 2 suitcases that belonged to the woman. Inside were wigs, clothing, and cosmetics, but every label had been carefully removed. There were also several passports and travel documents using different names. It appeared that the woman had been traveling across Europe under multiple identities. Witnesses later reported seeing her in several cities, including Paris and Brussels. Hotel records showed that she frequently changed her appearance and rarely stayed in one place for long. Among her belongings, investigators also found a piece of paper containing a coded message. Despite years of investigation, the code was never fully understood. These discoveries led many investigators to believe that the woman may have been involved in espionage during the Cold War. At the time, Norway was considered an important strategic location for NATO surveillance, but no intelligence agency has ever confirmed any connection. To this day, the identity of the Isdal woman remains unknown. No family has ever come forward. No records have ever confirmed who she truly was. Only fragments remain: a suitcase full of disguises, a coded message, and the haunting mystery of a woman who seemed to live many lives, yet left no trace behind. And in the quiet mountains of Isdalen Valley, the mystery still lingers. In 1957, a small cardboard box was found in a wooded area outside of Philadelphia. Inside it was the body of a young boy. No name, no missing report. No one came forward, and for decades, it was as if he never existed. On February 25, 1957, a man walking through a wooded area in Philadelphia made a discovery that would become one of the most haunting unsolved cases in American history. Lying near the roadside was a cardboard box, something easily overlooked. But inside, wrapped in a blanket, was the body of a young boy. He was estimated to be between 4 and 6 years old. He had no clothing, no identification, nothing to tell investigators who he was or where he came from. The case quickly became known as the boy in the box. Police launched a massive investigation. Thousands of flyers were printed. His image was distributed across the city. Newspapers and television stations shared his story. Investigators hoped that someone, anyone, would recognize him. But no one did. There were details that made the case even more disturbing. The boy had been recently bathed. His hair had been crudely cut. His fingernails were clean. It appeared that someone had tried to remove any trace of his identity. There were also signs that he had suffered from long-term neglect. He was underweight, and investigators began to suspect that his life may have been hidden from the outside world entirely, as if he had lived in silence, unseen, unknown. Police followed every possible lead. They traced the cardboard box. It had once contained a bassinet sold at a local store. They analyzed the blanket. They checked orphanages, schools, and hospitals, but nothing matched. No records, no reports, no family. It was as if the child had never been officially documented at all. Years later, a woman came forward claiming she knew who the boy was. She said he had been abused and kept isolated before his death, but her story could never be confirmed. And the case remained unsolved. For more than 60 years, the boy remained unidentified, until finally, in 2022, advances in DNA technology gave investigators a breakthrough. The child was identified as Joseph Augustus Sorelli. After decades, he finally had a name, but even now, the most important questions remain unanswered. Who did this? Why did no one come forward? And how could a child exist and disappear without anyone noticing? Because for decades, he was known only as a mystery, and even today, his story is still not complete. In February of 1978, 5 young men drove into the mountains of Northern California. They were supposed to return home that night, but they never did. What investigators later discovered deep in the wilderness would turn this case into one of the most baffling disappearances in American history. This is the mystery of the Yuba County Five. On February 24th, the 5 friends attended a college basketball game in Chico, California. Their names were Gary Mathias, Jack Hewitt, Bill Sterling, Ted Wire, and Jackie Wilson. They were excited. The next morning, they were scheduled to play in a basketball tournament for a Special Olympics team. But after the game ended, something unexpected happened. Instead of driving home, their car headed toward the mountains. Days later, search teams discovered their car on a remote road high in the Sierra Nevada mountains. The strange part? The car was completely functional. There was no damage. There was still fuel in the tank. Inside the car, investigators found snacks, jackets, and personal belongings. But the 5 men were gone. The area surrounding the vehicle was extremely dangerous during winter. Deep snow covered the mountains. Temperatures dropped far below freezing at night. Search teams struggled to understand why the men had left the safety of the car, because walking into the wilderness would have meant almost certain danger. Months later, search teams made a disturbing discovery nearly 20 miles away. Hidden in the forest was a small trailer used by forest rangers. Inside, they found the body of Ted Wire. But investigators noticed something strange. The trailer contained enough food to keep someone alive for months, yet the supplies had barely been touched. Nearby, investigators discovered the remains of 2 more men, but 2 others, including Gary Mathias, were never found. To this day, no one knows why the men abandoned their car, or what drove them deeper into the freezing mountains. More than 40 years later, the mystery of the Yuba County Five remains unsolved. Some believe the men became lost. Others suspect something far stranger happened that night. But one thing is certain: 5 friends entered the mountains together, and only fragments of their story ever came back out. In 1922, an entire family was murdered on a remote farm. The killer lived in the house for days after they were dead. In the quiet countryside of Bavaria, Germany, stood a small, isolated farm known as Hinterkaifeck. In March of 1922, something deeply disturbing happened there. 6 members of the same family were brutally murdered. But the horror did not end with their deaths. Investigators later discovered something far more unsettling. Days before the murders, the family's patriarch reported strange occurrences. Footprints appeared in the snow leading toward the house, but none leading away. Tools began disappearing. Strange noises were heard in the attic. And one night, the family noticed someone had been inside their home, yet they found no intruder. Then, one by one, the family members were lured into the barn, where they were killed. The killer then entered the house, murdering the remaining victims, including a young child. But what makes this case truly terrifying is what happened next. Neighbors noticed smoke still rising from the chimney. Animals were fed. Bread was baked. Someone was clearly still living on the farm, but the entire family was already dead. Police believe the killer remained in the house for several days, sleeping, eating, moving through the rooms, as if nothing had happened. Despite an intense investigation, no one was ever convicted, and the identity of the murderer remains unknown. To this day, the Hinterkaifeck murders are considered one of the most disturbing unsolved crimes in European history, because sometimes the most terrifying mystery is not who committed the crime, but how long they stayed behind. Some believe the killer was someone the family knew. Others believe something far darker was watching them long before the murders began. Christmas Eve in 1945, a house in West Virginia burst into flames. 5 children were believed to have died inside, but when investigators searched the ashes the next morning, they found no bones, no bodies. And soon, witnesses began claiming the children had been seen alive. So what really happened to the Sodder children? George and Jenny Sodder lived in Fayetteville, West Virginia, with their 10 children. On the night of December 24, 1945, the family celebrated Christmas together before going to bed. Shortly after midnight, Jenny woke to the smell of smoke. The house was on fire. George and Jenny managed to escape with 4 of their children, but 5 of them were still trapped inside. Maurice, Martha, Louie, Jenny, and Betty. The fire destroyed the entire house. Authorities quickly ruled that the children had died in the flames, but something didn't make sense. When investigators searched the ashes, they found no human remains. Experts later said even intense fires usually leave bones behind, but there were none. Then strange details began to surface. Earlier that night, the phone lines had been cut. George's ladder, normally kept against the house, had disappeared, and several witnesses claimed they saw the children after the fire. One woman said she served them breakfast at a roadside diner the next morning. Another said she saw them traveling in a car with 2 unfamiliar adults. The Sodder parents refused to believe their children were dead. They spent years searching for answers. They even placed a giant billboard along the highway displaying the children's faces. But the truth was never discovered. To this day, the fate of the Sodder children remains one of America's most chilling unsolved mysteries. Did the children really die in the fire? Or were they taken that night and never seen again?